Chapter 47:15. After He Huan left, she closed the door. She found it strange that the second secretary's attitude was so strange, but she couldn't ask further. She felt that AI Jia was a taboo in King Entertainment, and this taboo might have something to do with her. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat as she thought of the medical records from last night. She had fought with Qin Mo, the child she had lost. Hence, she had been restless the entire morning. She opened her laptop and searched for AI Jia. She was a very beautiful woman, especially her pair of eyes, which were very charming, but also not ordinary. Iwan closed her laptop. She didn't know why she felt flustered, but she couldn't put her finger on it. In the end, she decided to go for a walk. She didn't dare to go out. She couldn't go out, so she just wandered around King Entertainment. When she reached the 23rd floor, He Huan met someone she knew, someone she had known since they were young. Su Ilio. She was also a beautiful woman. They had grown up together, and the Su and Qin families were close. He Huan looked at her, and she looked back at her. After a while, Su Ilio said calmly, He Huan, you win. I've been frozen, and AI Jia has been arrested. What awaits her is a prison sentence. Qin Mo did all of this to make her smile. He Huan looked at Su Ilio quietly. She didn't tell her that she had lost her memory, because she had heard too many keywords. Su Ilio paused, then continued. But I didn't expect the arrogant He Huan to choose to forgive me after the miscarriage. After all, Qin Mo really wanted to be with me, and even Annie Qin agreed. He Huan, I remember that you were very aloof. You went abroad for so many years because of AI Jia, but now you don't mind at all. Maybe there really is a story between her and Qin Mo. He Huan clenched her fists, choosing to face it calmly. This attitude doesn't seem like it from someone who has been frozen. With that, she turned and left. When she left, He Huan's back was straight, and there was an indescribable loneliness. Women, beautiful women, surrounded Qin Mo. She could guess that he had a story, but she shouldn't have known about it today. He Huan's heart was originally a little pink, but now it was completely gone. Just like He Huan when she was angry, every strand of her hair drooped. She didn't immediately return to Qin Mo's office. Instead, she ordered a cup of coffee in the staff cafeteria. Her body couldn't really drink coffee, but she wanted to drink it now. When He Huan was halfway through, tears suddenly welled up in her eyes. She felt wronged, but she didn't know how to question Qin Mo. The past was in the past. He said that they loved each other very much. She couldn't question him because of what others said, but she was sad. She sat there for half an hour before Qin Mo called and asked her gently where she was. He Huan sniffled. I'm in the restaurant. I'll be back soon. Qin Mo paused for a moment, then asked her gently, Do you have a cold? Why are you sniffling? She made a vague sound, feeling a little embarrassed, and did not want to tell him the truth. How could he not know what kind of person Qin Mo was? He just brushed it off. Come over. Secretary, he has brought the food. It won't taste good if it gets cold. He Huan agreed, but she sat there for another half an hour before going up. Perhaps it was because of her rebellious mentality. Chapter 47:16. He Huan pushed the door open and saw Qin Mo sitting on the couch. There were 2 wooden lunch boxes on the coffee table in front of him. Neither of them had been opened. It was obvious that he had not touched a single bite during lunch. He Huan stood at the door. Her lips moved slightly as she felt a little suffocated. Suddenly, she felt that it was inappropriate for her to be like this. She had eaten some snacks at Secretary's place, and she did not need to work. However, Qin Mo had been busy the whole morning, waiting for her. He Huan pursed her lips and walked over slowly. Why aren't you eating? She asked in a low voice. Qin Mo's eyes were closed at first, but he opened them at that moment. I don't feel like eating alone, he said calmly. He Huan sat next to him. She opened the lunchbox and said softly, You're not a kid anymore. You need someone to accompany you. Qin Mo's eyes darkened as he stared at He Huan. It's different today. His words reminded He Huan of last night, and she blushed. She pretended to be fiddling with something as she whispered, What's the difference? The sun still rises and sets, doesn't it? After she said that, she turned to look at Qin Mo. Qin Mo looked back at her with an indescribable look in his eyes. He Huan felt her face getting hotter. She lowered her eyes and did not say a word for a long time. After a while, she remembered something. It's time to eat. Chin and Mo smiled and nodded. The two of them finished eating in silence. Iwan was the one who cleaned up after the meal. She was a little absent-minded. Chin and Mo finally could not take it anymore. He reached out and grabbed her hand. It's not what you think. Iwan's voice was hoarse. Ah! Her eyes widened as she stared at Chin and Mo leaned against the couch and closed his eyes. Didn't you bump into Su Ilio at the office? How did you know? Iwan's voice was soft. Chin and Mo smiled faintly. You've been in the office for a long time. Shouldn't I ask? Iwan was silent for a while. Don't you want to ask what she said to me? This time, Chin and Mo said, quite firmly, some unimportant things are already old and rotten sesame seeds. Iwan was speechless. She raised her voice. Chin and Mo, how is it not important? Maybe it was because of these women that we divorced in the past. Or we fell in love. CEO Chin said pragmatically. It's not like what you're thinking, nor is it like what you're thinking. If I liked them, they wouldn't be like this today, right? Hee-Hwan snorted and said, sounds reasonable. She thought for a moment and said, but Chin and Mo, you're talking about them. There are others besides Su Ilio. Chin and Mo paused and then said, AI Jia, don't you want to ask her? Hee-Hwan bit her lip and didn't say anything. Chin and Mo smiled faintly. There's nothing between me and her. It's too complicated. I'll tell you about it later. Anyway, Ronyu wants to send her in now. She held her breath and looked at him. Why Ronyu and not you? Because Ronyu has more right to hate her, but Chin and Mo thought that AI Jia must have something in her hands. That was why she let AI Meng Meng leave so easily. Iwan finally understood what he meant. She widened her eyes and said, but you'll make Ronyu lose AI Meng Meng. Chapter 47:17. You'll lose her eventually. Do you think AI Jia will let go of AI Meng Meng? They're sisters, and she didn't even let them go before. Now, that AI Jia is like this. Do you think she'll let her go? Chin and Mo said straightforwardly. Hee-Hwan nodded, then asked in confusion, what did she do? Chin Mo's expression softened, and his voice became even lower. Some things are better left unknown. Hee-Hwan forgot everything. He hoped that she could grow up innocently, just like Hee-Hwan. It was better not to know anything. Hee-Hwan stared at him for a long time, then said in a low voice, why do I feel like you're guilty? Chin and Mo smiled. I've let you follow me 24/7. What's wrong with that? Hee-Hwan was speechless. It was a boring topic anyway, so she didn't want to talk about it anymore. After walking around and eating for the whole morning, she wanted to go to bed. Chin and Mo followed her as soon as she went in. Hee-Hwan's eyes widened. Chin and Mo, what are you doing? He said matter-of-factly, taking a nap together. Hee-Hwan looked at the time. It's almost 1:30. Don't you have to work? Chin and Mo rested his head on his arm, looked at her, and smiled. I worked too late last night, and I answered your questions just now. Hee-Hwan, aren't you going to take responsibility for it? What worked too late? Hee-Hwan blushed slightly, then turned her back to him, not wanting to talk to him anymore. Chin and Mo smiled, held her in his arms, and coaxed her. Okay, go to sleep. You'll get wrinkles if you don't sleep well. Hee-Hwan immediately shouted, I'm only 18. 33, Mrs. Chin. He mercilessly burst her dream. Hee-Hwan snorted. I'm 18. Chin and Mo laughed and whispered in her ear. Then, why are you willing? Huh. Hee-Hwan's voice was a little light. Willing? But she immediately thought of what she was willing to do. Her face was a little red, as if it was on fire. Chin and Mo chuckled and did not say anything else. He was indeed tired. He had been taking care of her ever since she lost her memory, and he had been working overtime every day. Right now, CEO Chin just wanted to retire early. Hee-Hwan soon fell asleep, but Chin and Mo didn't fall asleep immediately. For a superior like him, if he were to fall asleep so quickly, what difference was there between him and a pig? He lay down quietly and thought for a while. He thought about AI Jia and AI Meng Meng's departure. He felt that something was wrong. You couldn't find AI Meng Meng, but in fact, it wasn't that Chin and Mo couldn't find her. AI Meng Meng always needed to use her identity card. At some point, Chin and Mo suddenly stood up and walked to the desk outside. He pressed the internal line and said, "Help me check AI Mingming's whereabouts at all costs." Secretary, he found the most famous hacker in the industry and found AI Mingming's whereabouts in less than an hour. It turned out that she had not left B City and had chosen to hide in a small hotel in the outskirts of B City. For the past 2 days, she had rented a very small apartment that was only 28 square meters. Chinamo looked at the photo and couldn't help but sigh. AI Mingming's love for Rong Yu was real. Before Chin Mo left, he told Secretary he to tell He Huan that he had a business meeting outside when she woke up. Secretary, he nodded understandingly, but was still a little worried. If He Huan knows, will she think too much? Chapter 47:18. Memorize. Chin Mo glanced at Secretary He. I don't want He Huan to know too much. Secretary, he didn't want to be nosy. Understand. Chin Mo took his coat and left the house. He drove for about an hour before he arrived at an old building in the suburbs of B City. It was the kind that didn't even have a neighborhood. Even though the building was 28 square meters, the rent was about $4,000 a month. It was very taxing for AI Mingming. Moreover, she had started working now. She found a job as a waiter and put on Japanese makeup so that no one could recognize her. Occasionally, a customer would recognize her, but she would just smile and say that they had mistaken her for someone else. That day, she happened to be working in the afternoon. As she walked down the open-air corridor, she was stunned. Chin Mo's car was parked downstairs with the window open. He sat in the car and smoked quietly, obviously waiting for her. AI Mingming slowed down, but still walked over. Chin Mo put out his cigarette and looked at AI Mingming. Get in, Secretary. He has applied for leave on your behalf. Let's find a place to have a cup of coffee. AI Mingming was uneasy. She had known Chin Mo for a long time. Perhaps he had treated her well because of Yi Huan and helped her because of Yi Huan, but they had never sat together as equals and had a cup of coffee. She was very clear about the difference in status between her and Mr. Chin. Just as she was hesitating, Chin Mo had already opened the car door for her and said again, "Get in." AI Mingming nodded and got into the car. Chin Mo immediately started the car. AI Mingming sat beside him, still feeling uneasy. After driving for about 10 minutes, they arrived at a nice coffee shop. AI Mingming thought that this was probably the best in the area. With Chin Mo's status, he naturally wouldn't choose a bad place. His secretary would take care of these things. AI Mingming got out of the car and looked up at the coffee shop. It was much better than the one she worked in. They walked in together. When the waiters saw Chin Mo, they all greeted him as Mr. Chin. When they saw AI Mingming, they froze for a moment before calling him manager. AI Mingming was shocked. Chin Mo asked her to sit down and talk. After sitting down, they each ordered a cup of coffee. AI Mingming took a small sip before saying softly, "Mr. Chin, I can't accept this. I've put the coffee house under He Huan's name. If you refuse, you could tell He Huan." Chin Mo continued, "I'll take care of Rong Yu for you. I've already arranged for an Annie to take care of him 24 hours a day. Annie has some nursing knowledge. Besides, Annie is already 40 years old. Nothing that you're worried about will happen." AI Mingming's lips moved. She instinctively wanted to ask. Chin Mo stopped her and continued, "It's Rong Yu. He loves himself very much. I guess he's waiting for someone." AI Mingming's lips moved again. She looked a little helpless. After a long time, she asked softly, "Is he okay?" Chin Mo smiled. His wife ran away. How can he be well? Although Annie can take care of Rong Yu, she can't take care of him emotionally. AI Mingming bit her lips and said in a very low voice, "I have my own difficulties." "Is it because of AI Jia?" Chin Mo asked directly. AI Mingming's eyes widened. She looked at Chin Mo helplessly. "Mr. Chin." Chin Mo lit a cigarette and took 2 slow puffs. "What did AI Jia say to you?" Chapter 47:19. Memorize. AI Mingming's eyes widened as she looked at Chin Mo helplessly. "Mr. Chin." Chin Mo lit a cigarette and slowly took 2 puffs. "What did AI Jia tell you?" AI Mingming froze for a moment, then took a big gulp of coffee. Her eyes were a little listless as she mumbled, She's too scary and ruthless. Qin and Mo didn't interrupt her and just listened. AI, Meng Meng said again, "Shit is something you can't imagine." After she finished speaking, she froze for a moment. Suddenly, her gaze met Qin Mo's, and her voice was very soft. "Mr. Qin, do you have an older brother named Qin Lu?" Qin Mo's expression changed. He stared at AI Meng Meng. AI Meng Meng said softly, "Mr. Qin, AI Jia has a child who belongs to Qin Lu, so even if Rong you were to sue her, in the end, Mr. Qin, you would still think of a way or use several times the manpower and resources to get her out. Rong you doesn't know, but you came to find me today. I'm telling you this not because I want you to save AI Jia, but because you have no choice. Qin Lu left for Mr. Qin, right?" This was actually very big news, but Qin Mo was very indifferent when he heard it. He just said that he understood. AI Meng Meng looked at him and asked softly, "Are you going to save her?" Qin Mo didn't say anything because he also had to investigate. AI Meng Meng didn't get a reply. She was a little disappointed and lowered her head to take another sip of coffee. "Don't tell Rongyu that I'm here." Qin Mo agreed with this point. However, even though Qin Mo didn't tell her, she still met Rongyu. To be exact, Rongyu found her. It was also in that small apartment that AI Meng Meng cooked noodles. A bowl of noodles outside would cost more than $10, but a bowl of noodles for her would only cost $2 to $3. She only earned $6,000 to $7,000 a month as a waiter, so she had to be frugal. Yes, she rejected Qin Mo's good intentions. She wanted to be independent. If Rongyu could stand up with such difficulty, then so could she. Moreover, other than Rongyu's money, she did not want to spend anyone else's money. The vain AI Meng Meng in the past was already dead. She wanted to live a good life and be worthy of him. Qin Mo said that he was waiting for her, so she had to be worthy of his waiting. Just thinking about Rongyu made AI Meng Meng's eyes water up. She wiped her tears away and barely managed to hold them back. At this time, there was a knock on the door. She thought it was the neighbor's older sister who came to deliver something. The people here were very hospitable, and from time to time, they would send some dumplings and noodles over. Therefore, AI Meng Meng didn't think too much and opened the door directly. She was dumbfounded when she heard the news. It was Rongyu who stood at the door. He was dressed in black, quietly standing at the door, staring at her. AI Meng Meng's lips trembled uncontrollably, and she couldn't say anything for a long time. He had lost weight, and his face looked somewhat serious. He was somewhat different from the previous Rongyu. His palm gently touched her face, and his voice was a little hoarse. "I've been looking for you for a long time." AI Meng Meng was shocked. She wanted to escape, but he didn't give her the chance. Soon, he came in and kicked the door. He missed her very, very much, so he couldn't care less. AI Meng Meng took a step back and bit her lip as she looked at Rongyu. Her voice was also very soft. Rongyu hugged her gently. His expression was a little repressed and restrained, but when he hugged her, it was very gentle. It was so gentle that AI Meng Meng almost cried. Chapter 4720. Updated quickly. When she was hugged, when she was in his arms, all her perseverance seemed to have collapsed and turned into a hug in the night. Reuniting after a long time was naturally different. Late at night, AI Meng Meng leaned on Rongyu's shoulder and said in a low voice, "How did you find me?" Rongyu's voice was very soft. "I followed President Qin here." AI Meng Meng's eyes widened, and she looked at him in disbelief. Rongyu smiled bitterly again. "What's wrong?" AI Meng Meng covered her face and said after a long time, "Rongyu, this doesn't seem like something you would do." Rongyu chuckled. "Why doesn't it seem like something I would do?" "Meng Meng, I want to see you. I don't have a way, but I know President Qin has a way." AI Meng Meng said weakly, "Rongyu, you become bad." "Am I?" He smiled. "I don't think so." After saying that, he lowered his head. "Come back with me." AI Meng Meng's body stiffened when he said that. She said in a low voice, "I can't go back with you." Rongyu frowned. "Why?" AI Meng Meng leaned on his shoulder. At this moment, she moved to the side and took out a cigarette from the box. Rongyu grabbed her hand. "You smoke?" "No, I just lit it up to take a look. AI Mingming's voice was soft. Then, she thought of Rongyu's body, so she didn't light the cigarette. Rongyu was very tolerant. It's okay to smoke one or two when you're really annoyed. Just don't get addicted. AI Mingming nodded and couldn't help but ask, "You don't mind?" His voice was still very soft. "I just don't want you to be too depressed." AI Mingming's fingers were still holding the cigarette, but she felt like she was holding a poisonous snake. He said he would allow her to smoke one or two, but AI Mingming felt that it wasn't good at all. Rongyu was also annoyed, but he had never smoked before. He had always tried his best to be a good person. AI Mingming didn't say anything. She just threw the pack of cigarettes into the trash can and said softly, "I won't smoke anymore." Rongyu nodded in satisfaction. He was even rubbing Imo Zhao's head like a pet. This made AI Mingming wonder if she had been tricked by him just now. However, Rongyu was usually an amiable person, and he didn't seem like someone who would resort to underhanded means. So she looked at him suspiciously, which was quite cute. Rongyu gently held her chin with his fingers and said in a low voice, "Are you afraid of that thing?" AI Mingming's expression changed. She stared at Rongyu. "How did you know?" Rongyu was very calm. "That person came out of prison and looked for me. I spent 3 million. AI Mingming bit her lip. "Did you spend 3 million on the photos?" "No." Rongyu's expression changed slightly. After a while, he said, "I'm just spending money to make this scum disappear completely." After he said that, AI Mingming was stunned. She stared at Rongyu for a long time, unable to say a word. She had never thought that Rongyu would do such a thing, and it would be for her. Rongyu smiled bitterly. "Come back with me. President Qin told me about AI Jia." AI Mingming looked at Rongyu. "She will continue to harm people. Are you afraid?" Rongyu said softly, "She's not a good person, but because of such a person, we have to separate. Are you going to hide from her for the rest of your life and compete with her to see who can live longer?" "But AI Mingming, I may not live that long. My life may only be 10 or 20 years, but no matter how short it is, I want to spend it with you. Honor and disgrace are not important to us. What's important is to be together and face it together, okay?" AI Mingming gritted her teeth and looked at him. She was already wavering and hesitating. Rongyu smiled. "Don't think about it anymore. I know you miss me." AI Mingming turned her back and ignored him. Rongyu was really shameless now. Rongyu pushed her. "Are you going to sleep already?" AI Mingming nodded softly. "Didn't I cook the noodles? I'm hungry." He laughed and said, "You haven't eaten either, have you?" AI Mingming bit her lip. "I'm not hungry now." Although she said in a huff, she also knew that he was not in good health. It was already very tiring for him to work hard, and there was nothing to eat. He probably couldn't take it anymore. She was worried, so she looked at him. But Rongyu looked very good. He didn't look tired at all. She felt sorry for him, so she quickly got up and put on a coat. The noodles that she cooked earlier could not be eaten. Apart from being cold, they had also become lumps. AI Mingming looked at them for a while and poured them away. She lived alone, and everything was simple. She rummaged through the fridge and only found a set of dumplings. It was a gift from the big sister next door, so she took it out and cooked it. Fortunately, it was enough for the two of them. AI Mingming cooked it and made the seasonings. She divided it into 2 portions and brought it to the small dining table. It was really simple. The two of them looked very uncomfortable sitting there. AI Mingming was a little uneasy. "Rongyu, make do with it. Why don't you go home and sleep after eating? There's no heating here. I'm afraid you won't be used to it." Rongyu held the bowl of dumplings. One look, and he could tell that she did not make it herself. He took a bite absent-mindedly and asked, "What about you? You're not going back with me?" AI Mingming shook her head and said softly, "I'm not going back. I've thought about it. It's good for me to live outside for a year or 2. She pretended to say in a relaxed tone, "I want to be independent too. I can't always be taken care of by you." Rongyu's gaze fell into her eyes, and he said in a very indifferent tone, "But I need someone to take care of me. If you don't go back, aren't you afraid that I'll sign the papers and find someone else to marry?" AI Mingming, "How can you be sure that I'll always wait for you?" It was almost unreasonable of him to say that. AI Mingming's eyes were filled with tears as she stared at Rongyu. It was the same for Rongyu as well. After a long time, he spoke again. AI Mingming, I'm not joking. I know you. The most unbearable thing in this world is loneliness. Once you're lonely, you'll change. Are you going to leave now? Are you going to live here alone and leave me there? Her lips began to tremble, and so did her voice. But, Rongyu, I feel that I'll be a burden to you if I'm with you. I'm not worthy of you. She finally said what was in her heart. She was afraid that she was not worthy of him and that he would eventually despise her one day. Rongyu's face was expressionless. My body isn't good. Not only can I not live for long, I can't even guarantee a normal life. If that's the case, shouldn't I have an inferiority complex until I die? But I know that I can make you happy. That's enough. If one can't be perfect, don't blame yourself. Don't you think so? Chapter 47:21. AI Mingming was stunned after he said that. Rongyu had a faint smile on his face. I'm not as perfect as you. I've liked someone else, but your feelings for me are blank. That's why I'm the lowly person in front of you. AI Mingming looked at him for a long time before she lowered her gaze. Have you seen the bank card I left behind? Rongyu only grunted before he said softly, What's wrong? AI Mingming bit her lip. I gave AI, Jia, 40 million. I thought she would let me go. Rongyu, I'm sorry. You worked so hard to earn money, but you're a bit of a prodigal. He nodded and continued, but I told you when we got married that this was your betrothal gift. You can spend it however you want. As for the living expenses in the future, the man should be the one to support the family. So no matter where the money was spent, I won't say anything. A man shouldn't blame his wife, right? Besides, you gave me the money because you wanted to be with me. If I blame you, I'll be too petty. AI Mingming was a little confused. After a long time, she said slowly, You knew. Rongyu grunted. Yes, I knew. Then why did you deal with AI Jia? AI Mingming asked anxiously. Rongyu reached out and stroked her hair. Of course, because she hurt you. Even if she might be released now, I'm your husband. I'll protect you in the past and in the future. AI Mingming couldn't say a word. She could only stare at him, her lips moving slightly. Rongyu looked at her with a smile, looking especially gentle. AI Mingming finally said, Rongyu, his voice was especially gentle. I know. As he said that, he picked up 2 dumplings from his bowl and gave them to her. You're eating too little. Eat 2 more. AI Mingming stared at him for a while before lowering her head to eat 2 dumplings. Her cheeks were puffed up. After a while, she said in a low voice, If I don't go back, will you really marry someone else? Rongyu smiled and pinched her face with his slender fingers. I thought you didn't care. AI Mingming didn't say anything. She just lowered her eyes and silently ate a few more dumplings before saying in a low voice, If you don't care, you don't need to be so conflicted. She looked at him and said in a low voice, Am I very spineless? He actually grunted in agreement and then said with a smile, A little, but I quite admire it. AI Mingming looked at him again and did not say anything else. Rongyu knew that she was thin-skinned, so he did not say anything more and finished the dumplings with her. He watched TV for a while, watching AI Mingming tidying up. She was very good at housework. In the past, when they lived together, she could tidy up the house very well. Now, although the place was small, it was still very clean. After cleaning up, AI Mingming said uneasily, Rongyu, why don't you go back first? I can drive. Rongyu looked at her quietly. Together? AI Mingming hesitated for a moment before nodding her head firmly. Yes, together. Rongyu sighed. There's no rush if we're together. Let's sleep here for the night. She still felt uneasy. She kept feeling that this place was too simple and he was not in good health. She was afraid that he would not be used to it. Chapter 47:22. It's free. Rongyu sighed. There's no rush. Let's sleep here for the night. She was still uneasy. She felt that this place was too simple and he was not in good health. She was afraid that he would not be used to it. But Rongyu said, There's no rush. Let's sleep here for the night. But Rongyu said, I used to live in a basement when I was at my lowest. This place is great in comparison. AI Ming Ming was a little surprised. Basement? She looked at Rongyu. He was so gentle, and it was hard to imagine that he would live in a basement. She felt that Rongyu was born to live a good life. He did not have any worldly things on him. It was as if he had always been clean. So AI Ming Ming had always felt that she was not good enough for him. Rongyu looked at her expression and smiled. Why? Do you think that I was born to live a good life? He touched her face with his jade-like fingers. I used to like an unattainable girl. I also thought that I was not good enough for her. But she liked me, not my background. AI Ming Ming, it's the same for me today. I like you. AI Ming Ming said in a daze. Is the person you like He Huan? Rongyu looked at her for a while and said with amusement, is that the point? AI Ming Ming was a little unconvinced. How is that not a little more serious? Rongyu just smiled and did not say anything else. He went to the bedroom and lay down. AI Ming Ming cleaned up and lay down too. She probably did not fall asleep because she had talked too much. Rongyu's health was not good and they had not seen each other for a long time. So he fell asleep. AI Ming Ming stretched out her finger and couldn't help but stroke his handsome face. She looked at him quietly and felt that she loved him very much. They had only known each other for a short time, but she felt that she loved him deeply. AI Ming Ming gently leaned her head against Rongyu's shoulder, which wasn't wide at all. She felt at ease. Even some of the lowly and weak parts of his heart had suddenly become strong. She used to think that she was strong, but now she realized that she was not strong enough. She was always afraid of being hurt. She was afraid that Rongyu would be hurt. Actually, there were some things that Rongyu did not care about, so why should she care? For the sake of Rongyu, she should be brave for once. AI Ming Ming thought in a daze, then fell asleep with him. After she fell asleep, she had a dream. She dreamt of Li Gui's blurry face and AI Jia's horrifying face approaching her. The delicate face was almost deformed and AI Jia was holding a syringe in his hand. AI Ming Ming woke up with a start. Her whole body was drenched in cold sweat. She was terrified. His surroundings were dark, but he could hear the familiar sound of breathing, and it was even a little warm. It was Rongyu. He was beside her. His heart suddenly calmed down, and he became less afraid. She was going to take a bath, otherwise she might catch a cold, but she was afraid of waking Rongyu, so she slowly lay down, still leaning on his shoulder. Rongyu did not wake up. He must be exhausted. AI Ming Ming suddenly felt that her choice was wrong. She thought it would be better for Rongyu if she left, but he seemed to be even more tired. As he thought about it, he understood. She reached out and gently hugged his neck, saying 3 words very softly. Rongyu smiled and said, I know. Chapter 4723. AI Ming Ming suddenly felt that she had made the wrong choice. She had thought that it would be better for Rongyu if she left, but he seemed to be even more tired. As he thought about it this way, he understood. She reached out and hugged his neck gently, saying 3 words softly. Rongyu actually laughed and said 3 words, I know. AI Ming Ming was stunned. He was actually awake. She looked straight at Rongyu, and he laughed softly. You were talking in your sleep. AI Ming Ming's face was a little pale, and her voice was also low. What did I say? Rongyu's warm palms gently held her. His warm eyes focused on her in the darkness for a long time before he whispered, You called my name, and you said that you were lucky to have me. AI Ming Ming was a little hesitant. Are you lying to me? I don't talk in my sleep. Rongyu laughed. Yes. Are you talking in your sleep? But didn't you hug me afterwards? Isn't that what you meant? AI Ming Ming felt that he was too shameless. She closed her eyes again and suddenly said after a while, Rongyu, you must have interacted too much with President Qin, so you've become shameless too. He snorted. AI Ming Ming bit her lip. When I was in the company, I heard people say that President Qin was very shameless to Director He, and that he would do anything. She couldn't say those words now, and Rongyu was a writer, so she could imagine it. He laughed lightly and happily. Do you want me to treat you the same way? No. AI Ming Ming's eyes widened an instant. Then she got up and said, I'm going to take a shower. Rongyu smiled and sat up slightly, leaning against the headboard. AI Ming Ming thought that he couldn't sleep, so she didn't care much. However, she still considerately got him a hot water bag. He wasn't in good health. But when she walked out of the bathroom, Rongyu was actually smoking, leaning against the headboard like a heavy smoker. AI Ming Ming was stunned for a moment. Then she walked over and put out his cigarette. Dr. Chin said that you have to quit smoking. He smiled. She also said that I can't have a woman. AI Ming Ming was furious. She was embarrassed and angry at the same time. She stared at him for a long time without saying anything. Then, tears began to well up in his eyes. Rongyu still leaned against the headboard and reached out to touch her face. Why are you crying? AI Ming Ming bit her lip. You're bullying me. He laughed. How did I bully you? Don't you know that men sometimes need a cigarette? Ming Ming, my body is not as bad as you think. A cigarette is not enough to defeat me. AI Ming Ming was still angry, but she didn't know what to say. After that, there was no after that. They simply laid down together and waited for the sun to rise. Early in the morning, Rongyu was the first to wake up. He leaned against the headboard and scrolled through his phone. When AI Ming Ming woke up, she saw that his expression was a little serious. AI Ming Ming bit her lower lip. Rongyu, what happened? Rongyu's voice was very soft. It's too fast, she exclaimed and took the phone from his hand. There was a piece of news on the hot search about AI Jia's inextricable relationship with King Entertainment. AI Jia and Qin Lu from the Qin family had a child, who had been abroad all this time. Now it was officially exposed. The child was a very beautiful boy, about 8 or 9 years old, about the same age as Qin Huan. AI Ming Ming had also seen the child. She said in a low voice, I didn't expect it to be so fast. Rongyu had been in deep thought the whole time. At this moment, he suddenly said, she will be out in 2 days at the latest. If Qin doesn't let her out, the Qin family will. Because the child wasn't in B City. Only AI Jian knew where the child was. And to put it bluntly, the child needed a mother. AI Ming Ming lowered her eyes. After a long time, she said in a low voice, she's really amazing. Rongyu, we're not her match. She's already prepared. She doesn't even care if she goes in. Because that child is the lifeline of the Qin family, and Qin Lu died for Qin facing such a child. Qin can't overcome his own hurdle. Rongyu gently pulled her into his arms. He could feel her trembling body. So he said in a low voice, I can't do anything else, but I will protect you well. I'm not afraid. AI Ming Ming's voice was soft, and there was a trace of trembling. Yes, she was not afraid anymore. Even if AI Jia entered the Qin family and became even more powerful, she was not afraid anymore. She had Rongyu. If AI Jia used underhanded methods, she would fight it out with her. If AI Jia had a child, she had to have that life. She loved Rongyu and was willing to do anything for him. She even loved Huan. She didn't want AI Jia to ruin all of this. She was also grateful to Huan. So AI Jia, AI Ming Ming suddenly understood her mission. She and AI Jia were related by blood. Their beginning was a sin. Since it was AI Jia who started it, she would end it. Her eyes became very determined. Rongyu looked at her. AI Ming Ming, what are you thinking about? She immediately restrained her expression and said in a low voice, nothing. Rongyu smiled faintly. Suddenly, he placed his palm on her hair and said calmly, don't do anything stupid. No, she said a little guiltily. Then, she lowered her eyes as if she didn't dare to look at him. Rongyu still smiled faintly. If you do something stupid, I won't forgive you. AI Ming Ming panicked even more. After a long time, she said softly, I won't. Rongyu seemed to be quite insistent. You promise? AI Ming Ming looked into his eyes for a long time before she said with difficulty, I promise. He was even more suspicious of her. Basically, he knew her a little. If she didn't do it, she wouldn't admit it. It was because she was thinking about it that she felt so guilty. Rongyu's gaze became complicated. He didn't say anything for a long time. AI Ming Ming tugged at his hand and said in a low voice, Rongyu, what are you thinking about? He smiled. I'm thinking that you've learned to lie too. As he said that, he suddenly said seriously, don't do anything stupid or I won't be able to take it. AI Ming Ming's heart skipped a beat. She only agreed and did not dare to look at him again. Instead, she chose to get up. I'll make breakfast. Will the noodles be okay? He nodded. Go back after breakfast. I'll get someone to cancel the rental after a day. AI Ming Ming was a little dazed, but she still nodded. All right. She wanted to go out. Ronyu grabbed her hand and said softly, AI Ming Ming, we have a marriage certificate. So, I hope that you will take responsibility for everything you say. AI Ming Ming replied with an O. Then, she said softly, I got it. She walked out of the room and clutched her chest. Ronyu guessed it. For a moment, she did not know what to do. She was afraid that she would let Ronyu down. He said that he couldn't take anything happening to her. Chapter 4724. Ronyu did not say much, merely looking at AI Ming Ming. AI Ming Ming lowered her head guiltily and left the apartment after breakfast. She packed up simply and did not have many things. When she left, she could not bear to leave. After all, this was where she had lived for half a month. Although it was a short time, it was also proof of her self-reliance. Ronyu waited patiently for her, his voice soft. You can't bear to? AI Ming Ming nodded and looked at him. I can't bear to. Suddenly, she hugged his arm and leaned over, her voice soft. Ronyu, sometimes I think that I'd rather you not earn so much money. I just want you to be well. Even if I have to work hard every day, I'd still be happy to earn a few thousand yuan a month and live in a house that's only a few square meters. She raised her head and said softly, I'm willing to use everything we have in exchange for you. In exchange for him, he could live a little longer. Ronyu lowered his head and looked at her tenderly. His heart was filled with tenderness. How could he not know that she was silly? In the past, he knew her and only thought that she was a pretty girl. He had seen her on the set and felt that she was actually a smart girl with good acting skills. However, it was a pity that she focused too much on her appearance. After one night, she said that she wanted him to take responsibility. Even though he knew that nothing had happened, he still agreed to it. At that time, he probably did not have feelings for her yet. It was probably because he was a little lonely. Ronyu had to admit that he was lonely as well. In his loneliness, he would mingle with her, eat with her, or listen to a concert together. Slowly, he realized that AI Ming Ming was actually a rather simple person. She was materialistic, and such materialistic people were usually rather stupid. She was ambitious, but she worked blindly. AI Ming Ming was such a person. Ronyu had been looking at her calmly, watching as she dug her own grave. There was nothing wrong with breaking up. He felt that since he was her boyfriend, he should give her some compensation so that her life wouldn't be so difficult. But after they became husband and wife, she went missing again. This time, Ronyu couldn't let it go. He wasn't a hot-headed young man who wouldn't do anything to a woman after hugging her. It was only after a long time that he realized he liked her company. But she went away, and it was not till he was sick that she came back. And when he opened his eyes, he saw her sitting by his bed and looking at him with those eyes. Ronyu was sure that she was the person he was waiting for, the person he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. They got married the next day and have been together ever since. Last night, he told her that if she didn't go home, he would find someone else. AI Ming Ming took it seriously. Actually, how could he bear to do that? When he was young, he loved someone. Now, he loved his wife. He didn't know how long he could live, but he knew that he couldn't have the energy to love someone anymore. Therefore, AI Ming Ming was the last one. Whether she was good or bad, he would continue to love her. Whether she was here or not, he could only love her. Ronyu thought to himself as he turned to look at his wife. AI Ming Ming looked a little nervous. She sat beside him and couldn't help but say, Ronyu, let me drive. With one hand on the steering wheel, he smiled faintly. I won't be so weak that I can't even drive. Chapter 4725. Memorize. He held the steering wheel with one hand and smiled faintly. I won't be so weak that I can't even drive. Her lips moved, but she didn't say a word in the end. Ronyu smiled faintly and started the car. AI Ming Ming had nothing to do while he was driving. After a while, she whispered, AI Jia is out. She's faster than we thought. It was enough to prove how much the Qin family valued this child. Ronyu's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. The car swayed slightly, but it quickly turned back. He said, there will be a chance. AIG's greed would harm her. One day, she would suffer the consequences of her own actions. Won't you believe that? AI Ming Ming suddenly held his hand and said in a small but firm voice, I'm not afraid. Rongyu, I'm not afraid if I go back with you. Rongyu's voice was unusually calm. Promise me, don't do anything stupid. Maybe we can compete with AI Jia to see who can live longer. The main conflict now was between Qin Mo and AI Jia. He and AI Ming Ming just needed to wait. Perhaps only Qin Mo could deal with AI Jia. Qin Mo had to sort out all the things behind her. Rongyu wasn't a reckless man. He knew what was important and what was important. Autumn Garden. It was a day of great sorrow and joy for Yi Liangxiu and Qin Anlin. Qin Lu was gone. However, he left behind a son named Qin Xian. His photo was exactly the same as Qin Lu's. Of course, it was also the same as Qin Mo's. Anyone in B City would think that he was Qin Mo's son. He wanted to know about this. After the news came out, King Entertainment almost used all their power to block it. He wanted lost her memory. Qin Mo hoped that she could be happier. He didn't want her to know about these things. The atmosphere in the Qin family is very gloomy. Qin Mu has been comforting Yi Liangxiu. Qin Mo and Qin Anlin are talking, and Qin Shun is leaning against the sofa, silent. Yi Muyun also came over. Usually, Qin Mo was in charge of the Qin family's big and small matters. This time, Yi Muyun came in person, which showed how serious the situation was. Of course, they want a child, but AI Jia was a hot potato. If the Qin family took over, there would probably be no peace. Yi Muyun patted Qin Mo's shoulder and said, It's not good for you to step in. AI Jia and He Huan were not on good terms in the past, and AI Jia's character. Yi Muyun had been away from the Qin family for a long time, so he was much more decisive in dealing with this matter. He stared into Qin Mo's eyes. After the child is brought back, AI Jia's existence is no longer that important. Qin Mo's eyes were dyed with a layer of darkness. Qin Anlin looked at the women in the family and felt that this topic was too bloody, so he asked his son to go upstairs to talk. Qin Shin followed quietly, and the old man turned back and glared at her. Qin Shan shrugged his shoulders to show that she was like this every day. Okay. The old man looked at her and then said nothing. Yes, a person with a scalpel every day, such a small scene would not scare him to death. The group went upstairs to the study and talked for about 2 hours. In the end, Qin Shin smiled and said, Kill the mother and keep the child. Which dynasty would do such a thing? Wake up, masters of the Qin family, and send AI Jia to prison when you have child. After Qin Shun said this, the other men all looked at her. Qin Shin smiled and said, What's wrong? Did I say anything wrong? No one thought that she was wrong, but they felt that she seemed to be worse than the men of the Qin family. Well, that was it. Chapter 47-26. The family meeting ended. Qin Mo was asked to stay by Qin Anlin. Qin Mo was silent for a while, then said in a low voice, Dad, I'm sorry. On this day, Qin Anlin seemed to have aged a few years. He looked up at the moonlight outside, then lowered his head and said, Your mother and I have long expected that Qin Lu would do such a job. Fortunately, he did it for you. I think we are all so selfish and don't have such great feelings. As he said that, he turned his head and patted Qin Mo's shoulder, his voice slightly low. Fortunately, he kept a son for us. Although he said that, he still felt sad in his heart. They had only seen this son a few times since he was born. It was just that when he grew up, he looked very similar to Qin Mo. Sometimes, he and Liangxiu could only watch Qin Mo miss that son, and now, they could only miss him like this. The saddest thing was that they didn't see him for the last time, and they didn't even know where he was now. They wanted to ask, but they couldn't ask a word. Qin Mo's voice was very low. Qin Lu, he was brought back to be city by me. Every year on Qingming, spring, or Qin Lu's birthday, Qin Mo would always go to visit. In the evening, Qin Mo came alone with Yi Liangxiu and Qin Anlin. As parents, they wanted to spend some time alone with their son, so Qin Mo also left. This was a separate cemetery. Qin Shun and Qin Mu were outside, and Yi Muyun was also here. Of the 5 children, only Qin Lu would be here forever. Qin Chun patted Qin Mo's shoulder, like a brother. In the future, we will also be buried here, so that it will be complete. She knew that Qin Mo was feeling terrible. Qin Lu had been gone for years, and Qin Mo had never said anything about it. Now that AIG's scandal, as well as the child's and Qin Lu's news, had exploded, it was a huge blow to his parents. Even they couldn't accept it. However, things had already happened. The child had to be brought back to the Qin family. Qin Xian was actually 10 years old, but his body wasn't very healthy, so he looked a little small. Later, a report was sent to Qin Mo. Qin Xian had leukemia and had his bone marrow changed, but the effect was not good. It was already a miracle that he could live to the age of 16. After receiving the report, Qin Mo sat alone in his office for a long time. Meanwhile, Ai Jia was arranged to stay in a villa. A day later, Qin Mo saw her. Ai Jia looked more haggard than before. Her eyes were lifeless as she looked at Qin Mo. Qin Mo sat on the sofa and asked softly, "Where's the child?" Ai Jia smiled. "He's abroad, but he can be brought back at any time." Her expression was a little absent-minded. "Originally, I had the chance to give birth to a child and then save him, but I'm miscarried. Qin Mo, you owe me this. Qin Lu died for you. Otherwise, I would have had the chance to give birth to his child." Qin Mo looked at Ai Jia quietly. "Where did the child come from?" Ai Jia's expression changed. After a long time, she said in a low voice, "I gave birth to him." "You gave birth to him, but it wasn't a natural pregnancy. I've checked. Qin Lu used to donate twice a year, but he only used it twice, and it was designated." Qin Mo stared at Ai Jia and said very slowly, "You're the person who designated Qin Lu's child. Tell me, are you two lovers, or is it your wishful thinking?" Ai Jia blurted out, "I like him." Qin Mo's expression and voice were very cold. "What about Qin Lu? Does he like you? Does he know that you like him? Or are you two just strangers, and everything is just your imagination?" Chapter 47:27. After Qin Mo finished speaking, Ai Jia's face turned ashen. What else did Qin Mo not understand? He knew how outstanding Qin Lu was. It was normal for women to be infatuated and crazy about him, but he really couldn't understand Ai Jia's actions. The child should have been conceived by a surrogate, because Ai Jia had been working for the past 2 years, and she couldn't have had a child when she had a bright future ahead of her. But her actions were really crazy. Because the child was carefully conceived, it was found to be sick the moment it was born. That was why Ai Jia got pregnant with the child herself after Qin Lu passed away. After Qin Lu passed away, she saw Qin Mo, a Qin Mo who looked exactly like Qin Lu. But Qin Mo was married. Ai Jia had tried many ways to seduce him, but to no avail. During Qin Mo's unhappy marriage, he had never once fallen for her, not even once. Just like now, he looked at her with indifference and nothing else. Ai Jia asked softly, "Why do you only love Yihuan? I'm not worse than her. I'm gentler, and I have a career." Qin Mo said coldly, "Liking someone isn't that easy to change. If you really liked Qin Lu, you wouldn't have changed. Ai Jia, you're just a selfish person. You created Qin Xian, but in your eyes, he's not a person at all. He's just a tool. Your life has long been twisted." Ai Jia laughed and even cried. "Qin Mo, do you think I don't want a beautiful life? But my life has always been twisted. No one loves me. I was adopted by a rich family and enjoyed all the material things. But do you know what I used to exchange for it? My adoptive father is a beast. That's not a reason for you to be crazy." Qin Mo said coldly, "Ai Meng is your biological sister. Not only did you use her, but you also hurt her. If it wasn't for you, she might still be living a simple life in her hometown. But what did you give her? Isn't she living well with Rongyu now? If it wasn't for me, would she have met Rongyu?" Ai Jia's face was twisted. Qin Mo thought she was hopeless. Should she thank you for hurting her again and again? Ai Jia, have you ever wondered why Ai Meng could meet Rongyu but you didn't? It's not that Qin Lu didn't love you. It's that you hate this world. You have malice towards everyone. You can't feel love, so you can't get it. Qin Mo paused. AI Ming used to love you, but you ignored her love and hurt. Aija, maybe you've been hurt before, but you hurt the people around you. You're not the victim, you're the perpetrator. AIG's face turned even paler. She looked straight into his eyes. I'm not. Have you seen Qin Xin's appearance? Have you carefully seen AI Mengming's injured appearance? Qin Mo said coldly, if you can't feel their pain, then you can't be saved. AI Jia did not say anything. After a long time, she walked to the window. She stood there and asked softly, can I still be saved? Qin Mo didn't say anything. He couldn't give her an answer. All he could do was take Qin Xian over and give this child his last bit of warmth. 3 days later, Qin Xian arrived in B City. Qin Mo arranged for him to stay in a villa. Apart from AI Jia, there were also 2 Annies and a doctor taking care of him. Qin Xian also went to Xingyuan Hospital for a checkup after arriving in B City. After the examination, Qin Shun said calmly, there is no suitable bone marrow in the current bone marrow bank, but there are so many people in the Qin family. Maybe there will be a match. Chapter 4728. Updated quickly. In the hospital, Qin Mo was looking at the child. Qin Xian was an introverted and sensitive child. When the adults were talking, the little guy kept quiet and shrank to the side. Qin Xian looked quite pitiful, and some things were not convenient to say in front of the child. After handing Qin Xian to the nurse, Qin Shun continued to talk to Qin Mo. I've seen AI Jia's bone marrow data. Fortunately, she hasn't completely lost her humanity and knows to match her son's bone marrow. Unfortunately, it doesn't match. As she spoke, she placed a set of data in front of Qin Mo. This is all of Qin Xian's information. If he doesn't have a suitable bone marrow, there's almost no hope. Moreover, his type of leukemia is rare. It's already a miracle that he can live to this age. Qin Shun stood up and patted Qin Mo's shoulder. If the Qin family doesn't have the right bone marrow, there's almost no hope. Second brother, be prepared. Qin Mo looked at Qin Shun. You can't do anything? Qin Shun shook his head. It's not that I don't try my best, but he was born with it. Humans can't change it, so we can only wait for the bone marrow. Qin Mo didn't say anything and looked at the thick stack of data in silence. Qin Shin's voice sounded beside his ear. Aren't you going to tell Yihuan? The Qin family has a child out of nowhere, and Yihuan will know about AI Jia's birth. Qin Shun said sincerely. When Yihuan finds out, she'll probably make a scene. Think about it. She's not as calm as she used to be. After all, she only has the memory of 18 years old. Qin Mo looked at the data and didn't say anything for a long time. Qin Shun poured a cup of coffee for him, placed it in front of Qin Mo, and sat down. Qin Mo looked at his sister and took a sniff of the coffee. It doesn't taste as good as the last time. I'm short of money recently, so I have to save some money. It's good enough to have this drink. Qin laughed it off. Qin Mo took a sip and slowly said, You made my appetite picky. Qin looked at him. Stop being picky. You've been working overtime in the company and drinking all kinds of coffee. I bet you'll be dead before Yihuan regains her memory. At this point, Qin Shun was still dissatisfied. Qin Mo, can't you take care of yourself? Qin Mo looked at his sister and found it a little funny. I'm cultivating now. How could I not love myself? Qin laughed at once. It was rare for her to laugh like this. Then she snorted softly. You're passively cultivating your character, aren't you? At the mention of this, President Qin's expression became indescribably profound. He was probably thinking about what happened a few nights ago, and his expression changed. Qin looked at Qin Mo carefully and concluded, Second brother, you're smiling so lewdly now. Qin Mo put down the cup in his hand and leaned back. He said lazily, Am I? I don't think so. Qin couldn't help but roll his eyes. He knew that his second brother had been holding it in for a long time and had probably gotten his way. However, it was hard on him. They were an old couple, but he still had to pretend to be innocent. Now, the clouds had parted and the moon had come to light. Qin Mo finished his coffee, and walked out. Qin Shun chased after him from behind. Second brother. Qin Mo turned around. I've arranged a bone marrow match with my family tomorrow. Don't forget the time, Qin Shun said softly. Qin Mo nodded. He agreed. Qin Shun hugged him. We all like Qin Xian. No matter what AI Jia did, the child is innocent. Moreover, he's Qin Lu's child. If possible, I'll let him live. I'll try my best, Qin Mo. Chapter 47-29. Memorize. Qin Shun hugged him. We all like Qin Xian very much. No matter what AI Jia did, the child is innocent. Besides, he is Qin Lu's child. If possible, I will let him live. I will try my best to save Qin Mo. Qin Mo felt a lump in his throat. After a long time, he said, okay. He walked out to a room next door and pushed the door open. Qin Xian was accompanied by a nurse, but he looked a little nervous. AI Jia had been raising him abroad. Although he had the best care, Qin Xian was already 10 years old. Other than the aunties and doctors and nurses, he had never come into contact with anyone else. He had never even gone to school. He was very shy. After Qin Mo walked over, Qin Xian looked at him with admiration. Probably because Qin Mo looked like him, Qin Xian had an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Not only was he not afraid of Qin Mo, but he also wanted to get close to him. Qin Mo reached out and held Qin Xian's hand. Qin Xian was 10 years old, but he was not as tall as Huan. He was thin and weak. When Qin Mo held his hand, Qin Xian's little face had a touch of longing. He had never seen his father before. He had only seen his father's photo, and he looked very much like Uncle Qin Mo. He had always been abroad, but he was a yellow-skinned, black-haired child. He had read in a book that the place where he should live was not there. He longed to go back to his own kind because the aunties, doctors, and nurses around him all had white skin and yellow hair. They all spoke English. Qin Xian didn't want to stay there, but he didn't dare to tell his mother because every time she came, she would be in a bad mood. She would only stay for a few days. He was afraid that if he made his mother unhappy, she would not come again. For a long time, Qin Xian was a child without a sense of security. Now that Qin Mo took him to the car, she asked uneasily, "Are we going back to Mom's place?" In fact, he didn't like his mother very much, but his mother was his only family member. Although Uncle Qin Mo and the others were also family members, after all, they were different. Qin Mo personally drove the car, his hands on the steering wheel. After a moment of silence, he smiled. "We're going to pick up my sister from school." Shinting didn't have to take care of Yuan alone, so he took the car alone, so it would be a little late. This was the time to pick up Yuan. Qin Xian exclaimed, "Sister?" Qin Mo started the car and said, "That's right, little sister. I have a child with your aunt. I also have an older brother called Shinting. We live together, so we can play together in the future." When Qin Xian heard this, he fell silent for a long time. Qin Mo thought that a child of his age would prefer adults to pay more attention to him. But when he looked at the rearview mirror, he saw an indescribable yearning in Qin Xian's expression. Qin Mo smiled. "You're very happy, aren't you?" Qin Xian leaned against the back seat. Because he was sick, his skin was very fair, almost translucent. He was also a very good-looking boy, but compared to Qin Mo when he was young, he was a lot more fragile and delicate. When he heard Qin Mo ask him, he replied softly, "Yes, I'm very happy." Qin Mo smiled and continued driving. He threw a phone to Qin Xian. "Use your phone. There are pictures of my sister in it." Qin Xian acknowledged and took the phone to have a look. There were many pictures of Qin Huan in the photo album. She was very pretty and cute. Qin Xian just stared at it, not coming back to his senses for a long time. He looked at Huan, feeling a little envious. She looked so happy. Would she be happy if she was accompanied? Chapter 47-30. Qin Mo probably sensed his emotions and smiled gently. You can go to school with Huan in the future. He knew that Qin Xian had never been to school, but he didn't know that Qin Xian had long surpassed ordinary children in reading books. It was simply a waste for him to go to kindergarten. Qin Mo's car was parked in front of a high-end kindergarten. There was still half an hour before Huan left school. Qin Mo took back his phone and called Huan. Qin Mo's voice was slightly hoarse. Huan, I'll go home after picking up Huan. You get off work so early? Huan was a little surprised. Qin Mo nodded and then said in a low voice, There's another kid coming. Do you remember Qin Lu? Qin Lu's son. After all, Huan had never met Qin Lu before and had only heard of his name. Thus, it took him a long time to remember. Oh, Qin Lu is back. Qin Mo didn't say anything. After a moment of silence, he said in a low voice, Let's talk at home. Huan nodded again, looking quite obedient. Qin Mo felt a wave of softness in his heart. There was also an indescribable feeling. The bitterness and pain in his heart seemed to have been mostly healed. His voice was a little hoarse and gentle. I'll be back in a while. Huan nodded. Qin Mo hung up the phone and suddenly came back to his senses. Qin Xian had actually climbed from the back seat to his side. Qin Mo put the phone on the control panel and asked with a smile, What's wrong? Qin Xian was a little nervous sitting beside him, but he still mustered up the courage to ask, Uncle Qin Mo, is my father called Qin Lu? Qin Mo thought for a moment and nodded. Then, he reached out and gently touched the little guy's forehead. He is a hero, a very amazing person. Our Qin Xian will also become such a person when he grows up. Qin Xian looked straight at Qin Mo. Qin Mo smiled. What's wrong? Little Qin Xian pursed his lips tightly. After a long time, he whispered, I heard that I won't live long. Uncle, you may not be able to wait until I grow up. After he finished speaking, he pursed his lips in a dejected manner and did not say anything else. Qin Mo reached out and patted his little head, smiling. With Uncle here, you will be fine. Qin Xian's gaze fell on his face, as if trying to determine if his words were true or false. Qin Mo smiled again. Your Aunt Shun is the best surgeon in the world. Qin Xian stared at Qin Mo for a long time before he squeezed out a sentence. Isn't it Uncle Qin Shun? Qin Mo couldn't help but laugh. She's a girl. Qin Xian took a deep breath. But she's more handsome than Uncle. Qin Mo touched his nose. Really? This wasn't the first time someone had said that they were really speechless when they lost to their younger sister. Last year, when they were voting for the top 10 Golden Bachelors in B City, the young women ignored the fact that Qin Shun was a woman and even more so, ignored the fact that she was married, and forcibly sent Qin Shun to the top spot. Now, even his little guy said that Qin Shun was more handsome. Qin Mo felt that the ranking was very credible. He reached out and touched Qin Xian's little head. You will also be very handsome in the future. There are no men in our Qin family who are bad. Qin Xian was a little unfamiliar with the word man. He had always known that he was sick, and under the emphasis of a nurse, he knew that he would not live long. He had never hoped that he could live long and grow up to be a man. This was the first time he heard someone say that. Chapter 4731. He reached out and touched Qin Xian's little head. You will also be very handsome in the future. There are no men in our Qin family who are bad. Qin Xian was a little unfamiliar with the word man. He had always known that he was sick, and under the emphasis of a nurse, he knew that he would not live long. He had never hoped that he could live long and grow up to be a man. Qin Xian was stunned for a long time. Qin Mo talked with him for a long time, and Qin Xian gradually became less nervous. There was even a trace of a smile on his delicate little face. After about half an hour, Qin Huan skipped out of the kindergarten. She walked in front of all the other children. Her hair had already grown to her ears, and her little face had been raised by Shun Ting until it was round. Qin Mo opened the door and got out of the car. He did not expect Qin Xian to get out of the car as well. They watched Qin Huan run over. When Huan saw Qin Mo, she was so happy that she rushed over and called him Daddy. Qin Mo picked her up. They had not been together for many days, so he kissed her. Huan was very happy to be hugged by her father. She looked at her little brother while being kissed. In Huan's eyes, Qin Xian was so beautiful that he was transparent, as if he was made of glass. She looked at him curiously. Qin Mo smiled and put her down. He just held her little hand. This is Qin Xian. He's 3 years older than you. Call him brother. Huan looked at her father and then looked at Qin Xian. At first, She refused to call him, but then she asked like an adult, "Daddy, who gave birth to him?" The little girl was smart enough to find that Qin Xian looked very much like her father, even more so than her. She was her mother's only baby, so this brother was not the product of her parents' love, but the product of her father and someone else. Of course, she wouldn't scream. Qin Mo couldn't help but smile, while Qin Xian's expression was somewhat sad. He knew that his father was already gone. Qin Mo noticed his emotions and felt sorry for him. He squatted down and said, "In the future, you and Yi Huan can be the same. You can live with us if you want." After he finished speaking, Qin Xian's eyes lit up. After all, he was still a child. He also yearned for warmth. He could feel warmth from Qin Mo's body. But then, his eyes darkened again. Qin Mo's fingers gently stroked his forehead. "What's wrong?" Qin Xian looked at him, wanted to say something, but hesitating. "I'd better stay with Mom." Although his mother wasn't good, she gave birth to him and didn't abandon him. After Qin Xian finished speaking, he was also a little dejected. Somehow, he knew that his uncle didn't like his mother. Now that he had chosen his mother, would his uncle be unhappy? So, he sneaked a glance at Qin Mo. Qin Mo was especially distressed by his son's cautiousness. He sighed in his heart. Actually, Qin Xian shouldn't have existed. Even Qin Lu probably didn't know about this child's existence. It was Aijia's madness that caused Qin Xian's tragedy. He wanted to make it up to this child as much as possible. This was the first time that Qin Mo was in a dilemma. A 10-year-old child already knew too much. Otherwise, he could have raised this child with Yi Huan. At this time, he could only comfort him warmly. "You can live with Mom. Uncle can bring you home for 2 days a week. How about Qin Xian?" Qin Xian's eyes slightly widened. He never knew that he could negotiate with adults. How could he know that he could have a child if he chose 1 or 2? So, his good-looking eyes were a little watery. Beside him, Yi Huan let out a strange cry. Boys can't cry. Chapter 4732. Yi Huan screamed, "Don't cry, you're a boy." Qin Xian bit his lip, his eyes red, which made people's hearts ache. Qin Mo reached out and patted Yi Huan's little head. "Don't say that." Yi Huan said, "Oh," and secretly looked at Qin Xian. She couldn't help but add, "You're a boy. Big brother, Shun Ting, never cries." Qin Xian liked Yi Huan very much, probably because they were related by blood. He asked in a low voice, "What if he's sad?" Yi Huan shook her little head. "Sad? Brother Shun? Brother Shun?" It didn't seem like it. She had to ask him later if he would be sad. But now Qin Xian was still looking at her eagerly, as if he wanted to know the answer, which made Yi Huan feel that she was the big sister now. She looked at Qin Xian up and down again, feeling that he had the potential to become her little brother. Yi Huan replied in an old-fashioned way, "Men either drink a little wine or play ball. That's about it, Dad." "Oh." A little person still wanted a correct answer. Qin Mo's mood was a little complicated, but after hearing Yi Huan's words, he couldn't help but laugh. He answered his little daughter's words seriously. But Qin Xian is very young, and he is not in good health, so he can't play ball for the time being. Yi Huan was in a dilemma. She stared at Qin Xian for a long time, as if she was thinking of a good idea for him. Of course, in the end, she couldn't think of anything. She sighed and said, "You'd better cry." However, Qin Xian couldn't cry anymore. He stared at Yi Huan curiously. Yi Huan held his hand. "Brother Qin Xian, let's go home." "Brother Qin Xian, go home." Qin Xian felt like crying again. Can't cry, he told himself. Qin Mo opened the door for the 2 kids and sat in the car to fasten his seatbelt. Qin Xian rarely went out, so Yi Huan helped him fasten his seatbelt. Yi Huan was very happy. She had another older brother. As long as he wasn't her father's biological father, it was fine. Qin Mo had mixed feelings as he drove. He had thought about what to say to Yi Huan, but he didn't know how she would react. In fact, he could give Qin Xian to someone else, but Qin Xian was like this, and Qin Lu did it for him. He couldn't leave him alone and let someone else take care of him. Qin Xian had said that he was looking for trouble for himself, and Qin Mo knew it very well. However, facing Qin Xian like this, he couldn't let go. He He wanted to make up for what he owed Qin Lu on this child. Moreover, Qin Xian was very obedient and sensible, and he got along well with Yi Huan. Perhaps, if possible, he could really keep Qin Xian by his side. Qin Mo thought to himself as the car drove into the gate of the villa. At this time, the sky was already dark. Qin Mo got out of the car with the two kids. Qin Xian seemed a little restrained, so Qin Mo comforted him. They walked into the house together, and Yi Huan was already waiting. In the warm big house, the lights were also warm. In the middle of the living room, there was a cart with a three-tiered cake on it with the number 35. Qin Mo stood still and looked at his wife. Is there anyone celebrating a birthday? I don't remember anyone in the family being 35 years old. As Qin Mo spoke, he took off his coat and put it on the sofa. He also put Yi Huan's little school bag away. Yi Huan's gaze fell on Qin Xian's face, and she said softly, "This is Qin Lu's child? So beautiful." Chapter 47:33. Yi Huan's gaze fell on Qin Xian's face, and she said softly, "This is the child from the land of Qin? He's so beautiful." Qin Mo's gaze became a little warm, and he replied, "Yes." He touched Qin Xian's hand lightly and said, "Call me Auntie." Qin Xian looked up at Yi Huan and meowed like a kitten. Yi Huan squatted down and patted Qin Xian's head like, "Qin Mo, let's eat cake together. Annie made a lot of dishes tonight. There are 2 children's meals." A faint blush appeared on Qin Xian's small face. This was a rare occurrence, and he was a bit shy. Yi Huan was beautiful and gentle. It was the first time a woman talked to him so gently and asked him to eat cake with her. Qin Xian had never had a birthday, so cakes were unfamiliar to him. Hence, when Yi Huan led him to the side of the cake, his eyes were filled with desire as he looked at the cake. Yi Huan also jumped over and clapped her hands. "It looks great." She thought for a moment and said, "Mom, should we wait for Brother Shin?" Yi Huan smiled and said, "You can leave the best piece for him." "Okay." Yi Huan raised her little face and looked at her mommy. Then she let out a strange cry. "I know." Yi Huan lowered her head and asked, "What do you know?" Yi Huan's gaze was still on her face. She said very slowly, "I know. Mom wants to eat it too. I can't wait." Yi Huan was speechless. At this moment, Qin Mo looked at Yi Huan. The weather was a little cold in early spring, but Yi Huan was wearing a set of white home clothes with a hat and a bunny. She was very cute and was quite a rare sight. When Yi Huan didn't know what to say, Qin Mo walked behind her and gently hugged her waist. "Are you that greedy?" Yi Huan was startled and instinctively wanted to break free, but he was holding her too tightly. She turned her head to look at him and simply let him be. She just pouted and said, "I'm not as greedy as you say." Qin Mo smiled. "Really? Of course." Yi Huan harumphed. Then she looked at the cake and said, "My movie has exceeded 3.5 billion yuan in the box office. Shouldn't we be celebrating?" Qin Mo smiled again. "You still want to be a director?" As he spoke, he helped her light the candle. His arms stretched across her as if he was holding her in his arms. As for him, he didn't care that his children were by his side. Yi Huan was already used to it. Anyway, the person Papa loved the most was her mother. Qin Mo lit the candles and asked Yi Huan to make a wish. She didn't understand. "You're a great director." He smiled and urged her, "Quickly blow out the candles. The children are waiting to eat the cake." Yi Huan blew out the candles a little embarrassedly. Qin Mo cut a few pieces. He gave it 2 small pieces and gave Yi Huan a rather big piece. She said that she couldn't finish it, but it would be finished in a while. In return, Qin Mo looked at her with a mocking gaze. It was Qin Xian's first time eating cake, so he ate very slowly. It was as if he was savoring the taste in it. He tasted something called happiness. It was a happiness that he had only seen in books and on television. He was careful not to show it. If he was too happy, everything in front of him would disappear. Yi Huan finished eating. Originally, she wanted to eat another piece. However, as a middle-aged girl, she thought about her figure and gave up on the idea. Instead, she looked at Yi Huan. After eating a big piece, she cut another big piece and ate it contentedly. Her face was full of satisfaction. She even exchanged ideas with Qin Xian. Chapter 4734. Qin Xian had a reserved look on his face. He smiled lightly, indicating that it was the best cake he had ever eaten. He was too embarrassed to say that it was his first time. Yuan nodded understandingly. That's because you ate it with me. That's why it tastes so good and smells so good. Qin Xian was speechless for a moment. How could he deal with such a confident Yuan? Yuan, who was standing at the side, was also stunned. Yuan was really overconfident. Qin Immerse smiled. It's hereditary. You were like this when you were young. You were like this when you were in my house. At that time, he was just like Qin Xian. He was stunned for a moment and was actually attracted. It was as if he was happy to have such a little thing in his house. Slowly, he wanted to monopolize her. He wanted to keep her forever so that he would always be happy in the future. Just thinking about it made Qin Immerse smile. He and Yuan had a wonderful childhood. At least he thought so. But when Yuan thought about it, she would probably scream. He had indeed teased her a lot. But now, Yuan obviously wanted to eat more. She was just restraining herself. He smiled and pushed the cake in front of her. This is for you. Yuan looked disgusted. Qin Immerse, you've already eaten this. I just touched the edge. It doesn't affect the taste. Or do you think I'm dirty? He asked with a smile. There was a hint of gentleness in his tone. Yuan stared at him. Qin Immerse reached out and fed her a small piece. Be good. Eat it. Don't waste it. Yuan resisted. Why don't you eat it yourself? She was a little disgusted, but she felt that it was delicious when she ate it. So she looked down and signaled silently. Amused, Qin Immerse continued to feed her. He fed her mouthful by mouthful and successfully filled Yuan's stomach. After that, Yuan and Yuan lay on the sofa, and Qin Immerse let Yuan lean against his leg. When Yuan saw this, she grabbed Qin Xian and rested her head on his stomach, feeling righteous. Now, they just had to wait for Shunting to come back for dinner. However, Shunting called back at 6 o'clock, saying that he had an activity at school and might not come back until 8 o'clock. They were supposed to have dinner together, but they were too full after eating so many snacks. So, they decided to wait for Shunting to come back and have dinner together. This was also to let Qin Xian and Shunting get to know each other. After all, they were both important members of the family. Qin Xian was a little restrained. Later, Yuan became a little impatient and dragged him upstairs to see her treasures. Many of them were bought for her by Shunting and Xiangnan. Downstairs, Yuan looked up and saw the children go upstairs. She sat up and scratched her hair. Why is there a child all of a sudden? Where's Qin Lu? Is it inconvenient for him to take care of him? Although she didn't bring any luggage and Qin Immerse didn't tell her anything, she just felt that Qin Xian was going to stay at home for a long time. She didn't have anything else, but she was still curious. After all, there was one more person in the house. Qin Immerse wanted to smoke, but he resisted the urge. After a moment of silence, he reached out and gently stroked Yuan's hair. Then, he pressed her little head into his arms. Qin Lu isn't here anymore. When I was in Meisher, he saved me. Yuan was stunned. How could that be? She remembered that Qin Lu was very, very powerful. How could someone like that? And it was for Qin Immerse. She looked a little dazed. Qin Immerse smiled bitterly. It's true. Chapter 4735. Yuan asked in a daze, what about Qin Xian's mother? Qin Immerse didn't answer her directly. He reached out and tugged at his wife's hair before saying softly, Qin Xian is sick, leukemia, so it's better for the Qin family to take care of him. If possible, I want to bring him to our side. As for his mother, he said conservatively, it's not suitable for her to take care of Qin Xian. Yuan was in disbelief. She had forgotten about Yuan, but when she saw Yuan and knew that this was her child, she was willing to do anything. She asked softly, doesn't she love Qin Xian? Is it because Qin Xian is sick? Qin Immerse stared at her for a while before nodding his head lightly. Yuan let out a long, oh, and then said slowly, if she doesn't want Qin Xian, you can bring him back. Anyway, I'm not a big director anymore, so it shouldn't be a problem for me to take care of a child. Qin Immerse smiled. I thought you would throw him to Shunting. Yuan said unhappily, you were the one who brought Shunting back. Why did you ask me to throw him to Shun Ting? Chinamo was still smiling. At this moment, he felt that Huan was extremely soft and obedient. She was even more obedient and adorable than when she was a teenager. Men didn't need a woman to be capable, they just needed her to be by their side and be happy. But at the same time, he knew that he was hiding a part of it. He couldn't tell her that Qin Xian's mother was Ai Jia, that she was such a despicable person who hurt Huan and caused her to lose her memory. She even did a lot of heartless things. Other than being afraid that Huan couldn't accept it, it was also because of Qin Xian. He was afraid that Huan would treat this child with complicated feelings and that he would always owe Qin Lu. Qin Mo's feelings were especially complicated. In the end, it turned into a sigh, and he gently hugged Huan in his arms. After a long time, he said softly, Huan, I've liked you since you were a child. The men of the Qin family are very loyal. Huh? Huan was bewildered by his sudden gentleness and confession. After a long while, she whispered, Chinamo, what's wrong? He didn't say anything and just hugged her tightly. Huan nodded and didn't say anything else. Then, she quietly hugged him with her small hands. She felt that Qin Mo needed comfort at this moment. At such a tender moment, little Huan and Qin Xian were peeping on the second floor. Huan's voice sounded like an elder. See, I told you. They're hugging each other again. They hug each other whenever they have time. Qin Xian's little face was a little red. After all, it was his first time seeing such a scene. So, he stared at them without moving. Huan patted him and comforted him. Big brother Qin Xian, you have to get used to it. Don't act like you've never seen the world. You have to get used to it in our house. You have to get used to Daddy only having eyes for Mommy, and I'm like a cheat. She sighed again. I've long gotten used to it. I've accepted my fate. Baby, don't cry. I still have Big Brother Shun. Qin Xian's gaze was still fixed on the people hugging each other. After a long time, he whispered, Are Uncle and Auntie in love? Huan let out a weird cry. It's such an obvious fact. You still have to ask? Qin Xian bit his lips and said slowly, But I don't know if Daddy and Mommy love each other. Mommy has never mentioned Daddy, and I've never seen him. I only know that he looks like Uncle Chinamo. The first time he saw Chinamo, he almost called him Daddy. However, this man who looked exactly like him in the photo had squatted down and told him gently that he was his uncle. At that moment, Qin Xian felt his nose sting. At that moment, he finally believed that his daddy was no longer around. All the care he was giving him now was sympathy. Chapter 4736. Qin Xian's expression was especially gloomy. Everything in front of him was blissful, but it didn't belong to him. To him, it was like a dream, an illusion, and a shadow. Even a child as young as Huan could tell that something was wrong with him. Huan was also a little mischievous. She had seen a lot on TV, so she stretched out her little hands and gave Qin Xian a comforting hug. She even promised, I'll be here for you in the future. Qin Xian looked at the little girl who was the same height as him. Really, they were the same height. He wasn't very tall because of his poor health, but he knew more than Huan and was very sensitive. Being hugged by Huan, Qin Xian had an indescribable feeling. He knew that this was his sister, and he could really feel the strange feeling brought about by their blood relationship. Just then, Shun Ting came back. He had gotten used to the public display of affection downstairs. But upstairs, little Huan was hugging a very good-looking boy. The boy was as pretty as Huan. Shun Ting looked up, ignoring Huan and Qin Mo. When Huan saw Shun Ting, she let go of Qin Xian and rushed downstairs like a little train. Big brother. She hugged Shun Ting like Shi Xiao. Shun Ting smiled faintly. What's wrong? He carried Huan and she pointed upstairs. This is Big Brother Qin Xian. Qin? Shun Ting felt that his heart, which was beating a little fast, had calmed down again. He put down Huan and looked at Qin Xian with a warm smile. Qin Xian looked especially shy. At least, he looked more reserved than Huan. When Shun Ting looked at Qin Xian also looked at him. In Shun Ting, he saw a very warm power, an attribute that belonged to older and younger boys, and this attribute was attracting Shinting, making him want to get close to Shinting. Qin Xian walked down the stairs step by step until he stood in front of Shinting. They were only 4 or 5 years apart, but one was more than 170 centimeters tall, while the other was only about 1 meter tall. The difference was not small. Shinting clearly knew that Qin Xian was older than Huan, but seeing that Qin Xian was so small and cute, he couldn't help but pick up Qin Xian and kiss him like a child. This was one of the dark histories that Qin Xian could not forget after he became an adult. He dared to bet that right now, Shinting was definitely treating him like a little brat and kissing him. He was almost 10 years old. Could it be done automatically? However, the 10-year-old Qin Xian did not know how to refuse. He just looked at Shinting with a slightly red face. He didn't know how to refuse. Later, Yi Xiaonan met him and heard that Shinting had hugged and kissed him. So he also hugged and kissed him. For Qin Xian, it was another dark history. At this time, Qin Xian was being hugged by Shinting, and he couldn't get down. He was a little anxious, but he was embarrassed to say it, so his face was a little red. Yihuan screamed at the side, "Qin Xian, you really look better than a girl." Qin Xian's reaction was that his face became even redder. Yihuan looked at him eagerly and then said happily, "You look really good." A few more black lines appeared on Qin Mo's face. Shinting was a boy after all, so he could guess what Shinting was thinking. He also knew that he was a little rude just now. Shinting wouldn't do this usually, probably because Qin Xian and Yihuan looked too similar, and they were very cute. He couldn't help but let his hand slip. Qin Mo and Yihuan had stopped hugging a long time ago, and they laughed when they saw the situation. Chapter 4737. Qin Mo and Yihuan stopped hugging each other and laughed out loud at the scene. Qin Xian was even more embarrassed. He lowered his slender neck. The skin on his neck was very white, and the blood vessels were almost transparent. Shinting was older and could tell at a glance that Qin Xian was not in good health. He probably had a serious illness. However, he was older and didn't say anything. He pulled the children to the washroom and said, "Wash your hands and eat." The backs of the two children looked very heartwarming. Qin Mo tilted his head and looked at Yihuan. "Mrs. Qin, how do you feel?" Yihuan snorted. "Shinting is usually not at home, so I can teach Qin Xian myself." After she said that, Qin Mo looked at her, and his voice suddenly became hoarse. "Yihuan, do you love me because of my dog?" Yihuan's eyes were level with his heart. She didn't say anything and just reached out to pull his sweater. After a while, she looked up and said, "You can also explain it like that." Qin Mo smiled and patted her. "Go wash your hands." Yihuan was very displeased. "You can't treat me like a child. Not 18. Qin Mo's face was full of mischief. Yihuan stared at him for a few seconds and then ran away. After she left, Qin Mo went to the dining room and sat down. After sitting down, he touched his pocket and instinctively wanted to smoke. However, thinking that the children were all there, especially Shinting, who was under a lot of pressure and was in his teens, he gave up. As he was thinking, Yihuan and the children came over for dinner. The food was authentic Chinese food. Before dinner, Yihuan presented a piece of cake to Shinting. "Big brother, eat the cake." Shinting was surprised. Qin Mo didn't deny it. "Your aunt wanted to eat it herself, so she found an excuse to order a cake." It was really straight to the point. She didn't save him any face at all. Shinting could tell, but he pretended not to. Still smiling, he said, "Let me try." Most men are boys didn't like sweets, and Shinting was no exception. However, he would give face to the kindness of the elders or Yihuan's flattery. After a few bites, Shinting looked at Yihuan's sparkling eyes and found it funny. Then he began to feed her the cake on the small plate. Yihuan secretly ate it one bite at a time. She was definitely not greedy. She was just helping brother Shinting with a small matter. Qin Xian was only 10 years old, but he could tell that Shinting treated Yihuan differently. Shinting's surname was Shun, and Yihuan's surname was Qin. As Qin Xian's thoughts ran wild, Qin Mo picked up some food for him and asked gently, "Are you used to using chopsticks?" Qin Xian nodded shyly. Then he picked up some food and ate it politely. He was very familiar with using chopsticks, so Chin was relieved. He was afraid that this child would only know how to use a knife and fork after staying abroad for too long. Hwan didn't care much about other things. At this moment, Qin Xian had Chin to take care of him, so she didn't worry. She drank the nourishing soup. Perhaps it was a little hot, but after a while, her face became a little rosy. Recently, she had been taking good care of herself. She took supplements every day, and then her face became a little hot. She looked up and saw that Chin was looking at her, so her face became even hotter. "Don't fall asleep later. Wait for me." Chin leaned forward and whispered to her. Hwan's eyes widened as she stared at him. He was really shameless. Chin chuckled. "Since Qin Xian is here, shouldn't we have a small meeting?" Hwan bit her lip and couldn't help it anymore. Chin Chapter 4738. Chin smiled and lowered his voice. "I'll put Qin Xian to sleep first. We can't always count on Ting to be our mother, right?" Hwan felt that he was getting more and more ridiculous, so she simply ignored him. Chin smiled again and finished his meal. He still had work to deal with, so he let Hwan play with Qin Xian and gave some instructions. After thinking for a while, he looked at Ting and asked him to go to the study with him. Ting nodded. He had a lot of homework that night, but Uncle Chin's tests always focused on the company and finance. Chimo never asked about his homework at school. After dinner, he went to Chinmo's study to participate in an international video conference. Chinmo didn't let him watch. He introduced Ting as his assistant to all the foreign executives. Fortunately, Ting was tall enough, so he didn't arouse suspicion even though he was a little immature. Ting's English had long reached the level of translation, and he was able to communicate with them fluently. His ability to adapt and absorb surprised Chin. He thought that if he let Ting go now, he would be able to take over in his early 20s. However, he had promised him that he would let him spend 3 years with Hwan. Men were ambitious. In fact, Chin wanted an extraordinary business genius to be born in his hands. He almost regretted it now, but it seemed that it was useless. After the meeting, Chin closed his laptop and looked at Ting, who was taking notes on the sofa. He asked in a relaxed manner, "How do you feel?" Ting looked up and lowered his head to write the last few lines. "Not bad." Chinmo's good-looking fingers gently tapped on the smooth table. He thought for a while and asked, "You have homework later, right? Can you take it?" As he spoke, he picked up the coffee beside him, which was specially provided by Qin Shan, and took a sip. As for Ting, he could only drink Red Bull and Duo Bao. Children were not allowed to drink coffee, no matter how sleepy they were. Ting shook his head reservedly. "No problem." Chin still smiled faintly. "You have to take care of Hwan. You have to manage the school affairs, learn the company affairs, and even have Qin Xian at home later. It's a little busy." Ting said without hesitation. "Hwan and Qin Xian are not troublesome. They're just a part of life. Uncle, I don't feel tired." These words had a profound meaning. At this time, as an old father, Chinmo sized up Ting. He always felt that this young man's ambition was not small. However, this wolf cub was recruited into the family by him. But was it better than he thought? Chinmo looked at Ting. Ting's EQ was so high that he could feel his father's hostility. Ting looked straight into Chinmo's eyes. His eyes were filled with determination, which made Chin feel helpless, but also somewhat convinced. He also felt a little proud. Such an outstanding young man was personally selected by him. He sighed and walked out with Ting. He reached out and put his hand on Ting's shoulder. He smiled again. "If you're really my son, it's also very good." "That would be perfect." Ting's body stiffened. At that moment, he could feel Chinmo's high regard for him and the regret that he was not his biological son. Compared to the identity of Hwan's husband, Chinmo was more willing to see him as the legitimate successor. Ting's identity was a little subtle. He stood at the door of the study, then smiled and said, "Uncle, I will balance it out." Chinmo sighed inwardly again. Chapter 4739. Qin Mo sighed inwardly again. Was he too harsh on such a good child? Shenting was very good, but when Huan grew up, her love might not necessarily be Shenting. At that time, he would feel sorry for Shenting. After all, he had worked so hard for so many years. However, men still understood men. No matter how much he sighed, it would only turn into a pat on the shoulder. After leaving the study, Shun Ting went to do his homework. Qin Mo went to Huan's room, where Qin Xian was. Because it was too temporary, there was no special bedroom for Qin Xian, so he could only sleep in the guest room tonight. Qin Mo took Qin Xian away. At the door, he thought for a while and told his little daughter, Shun Ting may work very late tonight. Don't disturb him. Huan said, "Oh," and then secretly thought that Shun Ting seemed to have no fun in his life. Every day, he was either working with his father or studying, just like brother Xiangnan. Was it so hard to be a man? Then she'd better not be a man. She'd better be a little girl. Therefore, after her father closed the door, the little girl went to check her little dresses again and found that there were not many. Well, it was time to buy a few little dresses. Qin Mo did not know that Huan changed her mind so quickly. She was willing to change her taste, but she felt that boys were too boring. At this time, he was only worried about Qin Xian. He was afraid that this child would be uncomfortable with strangers. Fortunately, Qin Xian was willing to stay. Of course, if he stayed to take care of him for a long time, he still had to have a good talk with this child. This was something that Shun Ting could not replace. The guest room was also a suite. There were separate cloakrooms and bathrooms. If Qin Xian stayed for a long time, he only needed to decorate the room in a style that boys liked. The room was warmly lit, and there was a set of comfortable sofas in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows. Qin Xian felt that this place was like a home. There was Huan, brother Shun Ting, aunties, uncles, and delicious food and cakes. He fell in love with this place, but he didn't dare to love it too much. He was afraid that if he loved it too much, he would be disappointed if he couldn't come back in the future. Since young, he had grown up in disappointment again and again. Therefore, Qin Xian's love had always been shallow, restrained, and patient, including the girls he liked after he grew up, and he only liked 5 out of 10 girls. Because if he liked too much, he would be very sad if he lost it. Just like now, he clearly liked her very much, but he tried hard to convince himself that it was only 5 points. Qin Mo reached out and gently patted Momo's little head. "Do you like it here?" Qin Xian nodded. "I like it." Qin Mo's expression and voice became gentler. "I've told your aunt that you can stay here for a long time." After saying that, his gaze fell on Qin Xian's face. Qin Xian said softly, "What about Mommy? Can I stay here too?" Qin Mo shook his head. Only Qin Xian. To Qin Xian, this was a huge temptation. He longed for such warmth, but he felt that if he agreed to it, he wouldn't be able to take it if he lost it in the future. If he didn't have it, he wouldn't lose it. This was his rule of survival since young, and it was a heart-wrenching rule. He lowered his head. "Mommy won't be happy." Qin Mo roughly understood his thoughts. After all, Qin Xian was only a 10-year-old child, and his thoughts were very transparent. How could they escape the eyes of an adult? Qin Mo's voice was hoarse. "What if your mommy is willing to let you stay with the Qin family?" Chapter 4740. Qin Mo's voice was hoarse. "What if your mother is willing to put you in the Qin family?" Qin Xian raised his eyes and stared at Qin Mo. After a long time, he said slowly, "Uncle, do you want me?" "Yes, I want to take care of you by myself." Qin Mo smiled warmly and picked up Qin Xian. And this was the warmth that Qin Xian couldn't refuse. Qin Xian was originally sure that he wanted to live with his mother, but now he hesitated. For Qin Xian, his mother was the one who gave birth to him, but she wasn't his family. After coming to Qin Mo's side, he felt what it meant to be a family. People couldn't help but want to get close to them. Qin Xian bit his lower lip, and his little face was unbelievably beautiful. Finally, he slowly leaned into Qin Mo's arms, a warm and wide embrace that could carry all the little boy's yearning. At that moment, he wanted to cry, but he remembered that Huan had said that he was a boy, so he tried his best to hold it back. Chin Mo felt his emotions and lowered his head to kiss the little boy's forehead. In fact, it's not only boys, even adult men have times when they break down. It's not shameful to cry a little. Qin Xian let out an ah, and then looked at Qin Mo in disbelief. His voice was even softer. Uncle, have you also cried? Qin Mo hesitated for a few seconds, and then smiled faintly. I think so. Qin Xian let out an ah, and put his little face on Qin Mo's arm. After a while, he asked carefully, Uncle, why did you cry? Qin Mo smiled gently. Because of feelings, because of your aunt. Qin Xian didn't know what love was, and he didn't dare to ask. He just obediently lay in Qin Mo's embrace. At this moment, he felt that he was very close to his uncle. Because he could feel sad and want to cry, so did his uncle. So they were the same kind of people. Qin Mo coaxed him for a long time. After making sure that he was not afraid of the dark, he closed the door and left. At the door, he looked at the bed again. Qin Xian's small body was buried in the quilt. Only his head was exposed. In the darkness, his eyes were bright. Qin Mo smiled, closed the door, and went to check on the other two children before returning to the bedroom. Indeed, Yuan hadn't slept yet. After taking a shower, she wore pajamas and leaned against the sofa to play games. However, she wasn't waiting for him to do anything. Instead, she had something to ask Qin Mo. After all, there was suddenly a big child in the family. Qin Mo opened a bedroom door and saw Huan sitting there. He rubbed his eyebrows, walked over to sit beside her, and pulled her into his arms. Are you really waiting for me? Huan was still playing games. Seeing him like this, she shouted, Wait, let me finish this game. Qin Mo's gaze fell on her face. A few seconds later, he let go of her and leaned against the sofa's armrest, closing his eyes to rest. As Huan played, she took a look at him. You're very tired, aren't you? Qin Mo closed his eyes and grunted. Huan finished playing in 2 or 3 games. Of course, she didn't care if she lost. She threw her phone down and leaned close to him to look at him carefully. She was so close that they could feel each other's long breaths. Qin Mo suddenly smiled. With his hands behind his head, he opened his eyes and looked at her. What's wrong? Huan simply knelt beside him and looked at Qin Mo carefully. He didn't say anything and let her look at him. After a while, Huan murmured, Where's Qin Xian's mother? Chapter 47-41. Memorize. Under the warm light, Qin Mo's gaze became a little deep. After a long while, he said in a low and hoarse voice, His mother is Ai Jia. Under the same warm light, Huan's face changed and became a little pale. She looked at Qin Mo and said very slowly, Is it that Ai Jia who made me lose my memory? Although she couldn't remember much of what happened in the past, she knew what happened after she lost her memory. Ai Jia was Ai Mengmeng's older sister. She caused Ai Mengmeng to run away from home, and Ai Jia had done so many bad things in the past. How could it be Qin Xian's mother? Huan was shocked. Qin Mo didn't say anything for the time being. She just stared at him. After a long while, Qin Mo sighed and said, It's very complicated. Ai Jia spent money from the gold vault to ask for Qin Lu. So Qin Lu doesn't know about this child. Qin Lu is gone, and Qin Xian is very sick, so I want to take care of him personally. Huan, I know that this request is too much for you. So this is a discussion, not a notification. Huan was still in shock and kept looking at Qin Mo. Qin Mo reached out and ruffled her hair. I know this is very unfair, but I owe Qin Lu. I owe him my life. Huan looked at him and said softly, If she wanted to use you to repay, would you still send yourself to her? After she said that, Qin Mo smiled. Are you jealous at a time like this? I'm not. Huan bit her lip and harumphed. Qin Mo smiled. Of course not. I only owe Qin Lu, and it's still with Qin Xian. As for Ai Jia, we can negotiate some terms. Looking at his expression, Huan knew how worried he was. She couldn't help but lean over and whisper, Qin Mo, you're very sad and conflicted, aren't you? Her approach made Qin Mo feel much better. He reached out and gently stroked her hair. His voice was slightly low. Believe me, I hope that AI Jiao will be brought to justice just like you. But for the sake of Qin Xian, you'll let her go and even promise her some conditions, right? He Huan raised her head. Qin Mo, this isn't your style. Qin Mo smiled bitterly and sighed. You know, Qin Lu didn't grow up in the Qin family. He had his own mission, but in the end, he gave his life to me. Hearing that, He Huan withdrew from Qin Mo's arms. Qin Mo let her leave. He Huan retreated to the other end of the sofa, hugged her knees, and buried her head in them. But after a while, she sneaked a glance at Qin Mo. Qin Mo felt a little sad. For He Huan's sake, he sighed. This was making things difficult for her. At this time, she needed to be alone to digest it. He Huan stayed alone. After a long time, she turned her head and looked at him. There was stubbornness in her eyes. There were also tears that she had been holding back. For He Huan, this was a very difficult thing to do. Right now, she was still an 18-year-old girl. She was not much more mature than Shan Ting. But now, the cruel reality was attacking her. Qin Mo didn't want to tell her either, but he knew he had to tell her. After an unknown amount of time, He Huan's voice was very soft and even had a thick nasal tone. She said, Qin Mo, I want to sleep. When people wanted to escape from something, they would eat, shop, or even sleep to escape from reality. He Huan was no exception. She wanted to sleep now. Chapter 47-42. Memorize as soon as she moved. Qin Mo grabbed her hand and said in a low voice, He Huan. He Huan sniffed and said, Let's talk about it tomorrow. I want to sleep now. According to a man's character, today's problem should be solved today, but He Huan wasn't a man, so he couldn't force her. Qin Mo let go of her and rubbed her hair instead. His voice was very gentle. Go to sleep. I'll take a shower. Oh, He Huan replied in a voice that sounded like a kitten. Qin Mo knew that he had made things difficult for her today, so he smiled at her gently and wanted to hug her. He did not say it out loud, but for some reason, He Huan came over and hugged him. Qin Mo's body stiffened. Feeling the small and adorable creature in his arms, he lowered his head and kissed her forehead. What's wrong? He Huan threw herself into his arms. After a while, she raised her head and said in a soft and cute voice, Qin Mo, you're sad too, aren't you? Qin Mo didn't say anything, so He Huan didn't ask anymore. She just kissed him through his sweater. I'm going to bed. Qin Mo watched as she climbed onto the bed. She lay down and pulled up the blanket. He stood alone in silence for a while before going to the bathroom. He didn't take a shower immediately, but leaned against the sink and smoked for a while. When the pack of cigarettes was empty, he crushed it and threw it into the trash can. He turned on the exhaust fan to remove the smell before taking a quick shower. When Qin Mo returned to the bedroom, He Huan seemed to have fallen asleep. Only a strand of her black hair could be seen. He smiled and moved to pull back the covers and lay down beside her. Knowing that she wasn't asleep, he tugged at her hair. Aren't you afraid of suffocating? It's none of your business. He Huan's voice was gloomy. Then, she turned around and ignored him. Qin Mo couldn't help but smile. He lay flat and looked at the ceiling. After a while, he couldn't help but turn her over. Are you still angry? He Huan refused to approach him. She lowered her head and snorted. Shouldn't I be angry? It should be, Qin Mo murmured. It's my fault. He Huan felt wronged. She could not remember anything. He said that they were husband and wife and that they loved each other very much. Now that Ronyu had a wife, she didn't know what to do. Now that she was with Qin Mo, she realized that he had a lot of things to do. He Huan's little face was pressed against the pillow, and her fingers gently touched the pillowcase. Her voice was very, very soft. With you like this, I really don't know how we got along well in the past. We even fell in love. Qin Mo, are you lying to me? You have a lot of dark history. I'm not that stupid, right? Qin Mo chuckled softly. But you're an idiot. You're the fool, she said defiantly. Qin Mo was still smiling. Yes, I'm also an idiot. After he said that, He Huan looked at him and laid on the pillow. Time to sleep. Qin Mo raised his hand and dimmed the lights. Then they lay flat together. He Huan's body was weak. Even though she was full of thoughts, she soon fell asleep, especially in his warm arms. Qin Mo didn't fall asleep until late at night. He wanted to get up and smoke a few cigarettes in the study, but Huan kept hugging him. He was afraid that he would wake her up, so he lay quietly until late at night. When he woke up, his phone rang. He held Huan with one hand and reached for the phone by the bedside with the other. The call was from none other than Ijia. Chapter 47-43. Chinamo lowered his head and looked at Huan. She had woken up and was in his arms, her eyes wide open. He looked at the expression on her face. She seemed to mind. Chinamo reached out and pinched her little face. Then he lifted the blanket and got up. I'm going to the study to take the call. Huan wanted to say something, but Chinamo had already left and closed the door. Huan had wanted to listen to the call because she saw that it was Ijia, but she gave up after some thought. Chinamo came back about 5 minutes after he went to the study. When he came back, Chinamo put his phone aside and leaned against the bed. Huan looked up. What did you talk about? Chinamo tilted his head and looked at her silently for a long time. Then he said in a low voice, we'll talk about it later. He reached out and held her hand. Huan, if it can be solved with money, it's not a problem. Huan looked up and said in a weak voice, Chinamo, it's not that I don't want to spend money. I know. He smiled. You just don't want me to see her. Huan widened her eyes. I don't think so. Chinamo was still smiling as he looked at her. Huan didn't say anything. After a long time, like a little lamb, she said in a dissatisfied voice, I don't want you to see her. Chinamo laughed out loud and then looked at her very gently. Why don't we go together? Huan bit her lip. No, I don't want to see her. Chinamo smiled. This won't do, and that won't do. What should we do then? Huan looked at him. I'll wait for you in the car with Qin Xian. Chinamo stared at her for a long time. Then he smiled and said, okay. Huan stared at him for a long time before saying, Chinamo, your smile is very meaningful. He pinched her face. You can see that. So smart. Huan glared at him. Chinamo leaned over and whispered, we didn't even have a party last night. Think about how you're going to make it up to me. It took Huan a long time to figure out what he meant. She shouted, you're shameless. Chinamo chuckled lowly and had already gone to the bathroom. He quickly cleaned himself up, put on his shirt and trousers, and was tying his tie. He did it a few times, but he didn't seem very satisfied. So he walked in front of her and said, tie it for me. Huan got up from under the blanket and knelt by the bed. Then she said in a low voice, I might not be able to play well. As she spoke, she took the tie from his hand and tied it beautifully in a few moves. Even Huan was a little surprised. When did she get such a skill? Chinamo smiled. I've said it before. We used to have a good relationship. You often help me fight. Practice makes perfect. This action of yours is already instinctive. Huan was a little suspicious of his words. Chinamo bent over and kissed her. You should get up in a while. I've made an appointment at 9. We'll send the kids to school first, then talk to Ijia. If we have time, we can also help Qin Xian take care of the school. Huan asked worriedly, isn't he sick? Isn't it a little too early to take care of the school? Chimo's expression was a little warm. We need to let him feel that he's a normal kid and that he has a future. We don't want Qin Xian to wait in this house. If that's the case, there's no difference from before, and there's no need for him to live with us. Oh, Huan said honestly, but I still think, I don't want you to think I want me to think. Listen to me. Chinamo was a little mischievous when he thought of the top class in August. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.